Welcome to the Gibraltar Business Podcast, which is brought to you by the GFSB and sponsored by Gibraltar International Bank. Thank you for tuning in and listening, and thank you also to the team behind the scenes who make all of this happen. My name is David Revagliatte, and I am honored to be in an amazing location with the guy that's behind it all, Christian Wright.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Excited to, I think, have the first bit of exposure on this incredible job that I think me and my team are doing.
Yeah, well, actually, it's a real honor, and I don't say it lightly, right? Being in here and knowing the tour that you've just given me, that I know is available to the public right now, is a true coup, and that thing behind me is captivating.
Yeah, she was. A lot of people scoffed at the idea of bringing a Spitfire to the tunnels, and I think a lot of people don't sometimes think that there's a link, but there's a very strong link. And what's cool about it is once you start to learn about what this particular Spitfire is and what this particular Spitfire represents, you start to understand another layer of the story that links the tunnels to Gibraltar's World War II history holistically. So a lot of the rubble that was taken out of the tunnels was then used to extend the runway so that we could have more aircraft on that runway, bigger aircraft for things like Operation Torch, which was the first sort of major push by the Allies into North Africa.
I think, Christian, a lot of the stories is a big theme through the tunnel and a lot of the history here in Gibraltar, but I want to know a bit more about your history before that. And you and I have worked together on a number of projects, and I'm sure that a lot of university when I was there at the Union, remember?
Yes.
For the listeners, Christian was my go-to always to produce some great content and video for my employer at the time, the university. So that's where we started. And I think a lot of our listeners and a lot of people might know you from Wright Tech Media, the film production company. Yeah. Firstly, how did you get to set up that company?
Okay. That is a bit of a tale. I finished my university degree in journalism, and I came back to Gibraltar and I saw a gap in the market for videographic services. And my dream was very much to create a company that was a one-stop shop for all those marketing needs. So from video to graphic design to web design, to have somewhere where you could go in and you could, light the fire of your idea, and we would just spread that completely. And for a long time, we were very successful at that. And we had these different elements opening. But it kind of transitioned to a stage where I thought, there are a lot of great companies opening up that were competing on a very high level and doing some fantastic content, and I just felt that we could then apply the skill sets that we were learning and had learned for well over a decade into tourism site development. So it was kind of that, it almost felt like a natural transition, even though it doesn't feel like a natural transition.
When did you get that idea? Because you're talking about when you came from uni, there was a gap. Yeah, you saw a gap. When did you see the gap to say, right, I want to leave that and then do something completely different?
Well, we had been doing a lot of work for people like the Gibraltar Tourist Board and private and international clients who wanted to showcase Gibraltar as a space to really attract the international visitor. So when you spend a long time inside the tourism sites and you're filming them and you're trying to create a narrative, you start to see where you feel that it could be improved, and you start to see where you feel as both, from a business perspective, but also from a Gibraltarian perspective, the stories that you want to propagate. So I kind of thought, we've got this team that are very skilled in what they do. How can we apply that to the tourism sites and try and improve the product? And it kind of almost felt very, very natural in that respect. So, going and filming, in St. Michael's Cave, for example, you see this beautiful space and you think, what can we do to accentuate it? And we'd already been making contacts with different companies for other jobs and other reasons. And we thought, let's try and, add that skill set to our team, and then bang, we had the awakening. So it was sort of like that was the first foray, and then it just felt very much like copy pasting those skills and taking that ethos and evolving it.
I think this is it. You've got like media, content, video. A lot of it is storytelling and kind of creating a narrative. So the link is there, but were the skills, what were the skills that you had to buy into or employ when you started something like The Awakening?
There was a lot of things that we had on tap already. So graphic design, we wanted to rebrand. But when you do a rebrand, you have to look at it from the point of view as what is the message that you're putting across to the public, to the client, to the visitor. And we felt that we needed things like copywriting, storyboarding. We needed to explore new types of technologies that were in the marketplace that would otherwise you would never have thought would work in that environment. So it was a lot of, I think, trial and error to find the right product for the right space. So when we talk about what skill sets we wanted to kind of bring on, it was very much, I felt that we were kind of avant-garde, leading the way here locally for that kind of product development. So it was just very much getting out there and calling people and trying to get people on board, and we did, thankfully.
What about like things like logistics, right? Because you've given me, which I think I'll encourage listeners, this is open to the public, as you said before, to come up and see it for themselves. But as well as all of these things that you're talking about, there has to be the logistics, the construction, the making of something. How was that different? And tell me a bit more of that process.
Insofar as The Awakening to the tunnels, or it just
I guess from a tourist product perspective.
Well, when you look at, if I look at the work that I was doing, when we talk about marketing and media and stuff like that, you don't have to liaise with, construction teams and graphic design teams and exhibition experts and, fabricators and all this kind of stuff. So we had to develop this idea of project management on a much wider scale with a lot more versatility. And when it came to setting up things like The Awakening or setting up this, there are a lot of similarities. We had, for this particular project, we had 3 construction teams working at any one time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's stressful already.
No,
right?
no. It was a lot of, my hair was falling out. It was, it was not good. We had 3 construction teams. We had a full team of electricians. We had fabricators, both locally and where we couldn't find those skills locally, because we always look first in the local market. We had to go to the UK. So, for example, the Spitfire was created by a company in the UK that did film props, and they did films like Fury and Dunkirk and all this kind of stuff. So you know that it was always top quality. So there was a lot of that kind of management that we had to kind of liaise not only locally with tons of different teams, but internationally also. So it was, stressful to say the least.
On that, was there any moment that you thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? Is this the right move?
You know what? No, not a single point in this journey have I ever taken a step back and gone, oh, this was a mistake. Because
wow.
I kind of can say with complete and utter confidence, and I think I speak for my team as well when I say this, but we really believe in what we're doing. And I think telling the stories that we're telling and doing it in such an aesthetically pleasing manner, but in a sympathetic and respectful way also has meant so much to us as Gibraltarians, as much as, businessmen and women. It's about, the other day we had, I would say about 5 or 6 local kids come up just because they'd heard about the plane. You know what I mean? And to see, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but to see something that we haven't really promoted yet, and have it already reaching the community and having people start to re-engage with that history has meant that, it's all worth it. All the stress, all the sleepless nights, all the, oh my gosh, we have to budget for this and we have to make sure this contractor's going to hit this deadline because we can't get this piece in if that guy hasn't finished. It all makes it worth it when you see the local re-engaging with the product and when you see the visitor taking away our history and our story, not just the military British traditional stories that are being told, but the stories of the civilian and stories that you and I can resonate with and my son can resonate with and your mum can resonate with, and everybody has a connection to that narrative, and that makes it all worth it.
How do you keep it sympathetic? You mentioned, doing it all in a way that tells the Gibraltarian history, the Gibraltarian story, and sympathetic to lots of different angles. Are you collaborating with people locally to happen?
I think, we discussed this earlier. The idea for this space is very much not about glorifying war, but telling the stories of the sacrifices of the men and women that not only created this space, but made the creation of this space possible. And that involves the civilian population as much as it does the military servicemen and women. So when we talk about that, you have to get the facts right. So we were liaising consistently and still now continuously with local experts who, there are plenty of them, passionate people who know what they're talking about, who want to see something like this come to pass because they want those stories told. So liaising with them, liaising with different foundations. We were talking we still are, with the Ian Fleming Foundation, working with the Imperial War Museum, Getty Images, the Royal Canadian Engineers, the Royal Engineers. I mean, the list goes on. But it was very much about really tapping into that level of expertise to make sure that you tell a story like this, which transcends Gibraltar. I mean, when you talk World War II, man's darkest hour, Axis, Allies, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a connection to this story. So you have to make sure that you're getting those facts right and you're getting those people on board to make sure that you create the best product possible. So, I mean, if we talk about making it as sympathetic as possible and as respectful as possible, it's making sure that you have those facts.
I think just hearing the answer, I can see where the sleepless nights come from. A lot of it, but also your professionalism and your attention to detail, Christian, as someone who's worked with you and depending on what you deliver, I have no doubt on the quality of this. But let's talk about the plane a minute, right?
Okay.
Because
the plane in the room.
The plane in the room. What you've done in this space, and we're going to include some footage in the podcast itself, is unique, right? And Gibraltar has unique spaces. You've done it in the St. Michael's Cave with the Awakening and create that. And you've created it here in the Spitfire Hall. How did you get that thing through that door?
Prayer. No.
Prayer, okay.
It was a lot of planning, a lot of really professional individuals. Like, we had Eastgate, and they were top-notch company who made everything extremely easy. You had MH Bland working with the stevedores and the work that they did down in the port, and then having our own team liaising and making sure that the measurements were right, the weights were right, and then you're talking about highways and different government departments, Department of the Environment, the police. There were so many individual groups, departments, companies involved in bringing this beautiful replica up here to the tunnels. Easy it was not.
No. But the impact is again unique and wow, jaw-dropping. The minute you come into this hall, to see that here and to actually film the podcast here is amazing.
I think this is a key example of a story that would have disappeared had it not been given exposure, because this is a direct replica of the plane that was purchased by the people of Gibraltar for the RAF.
Wow.
So it has a really, I think, symbolic link between Gibraltar, town to the military and our history and our roots. And everybody always says the Spitfire is symbolic of the British spirit. So it's really powerful. When you walk in here, you don't expect to see something like this hanging in here.
In a tunnel is the last thing you expect to see. Yeah. Bats, but Spitfire, no.
Yeah,
what are your plans for the rest of the space?
Insofar as carrying up?
What are the plans in the future?
So we've, this is sort of phase one, which is to the junction. And then we have planned out every single chamber all the way up until Jock's balcony to make sure that so the idea of the site is not to tell the tunnel story, right? It's to tell Gibraltar's World War II story holistically. So that way we can tap into all these incredible stories, incredible individuals who made that particular element of our history so poignant and so impactful. So each of the chambers are going to be dedicated to different elements of that. So we want to look at things like the Royal Navy, Force H that was based here. We want to look at extending the idea of what the civilians were doing, because it wasn't just, when you look at the evacuation, there were so many people that stayed behind, brave men and women that stayed behind, were serving in the Gibraltar Defence Force, or stayed on to be bell divers in the docks. So there are a lot of these different sort of stories that we still want to tell, a lot of spy games, So there is content, there's plenty, and space, there's plenty.
Yeah. And also, who's it for? Because you've got obviously a tourism sector in Gibraltar, which I want to talk about in a sec. But you have plans for Gibraltar's business community can hire some spaces, or
So when we first took sort of the site and looked at how we could develop it, we wanted again to take the same ethos of how we were telling the story and apply it to the product itself and look at it holistically. So this space that we're in right now is a rentable space. It can fit 500 people, which I believe, I might be wrong, is one of the largest conference facilities in Gibraltar, not including the stadiums. And it's an extremely unique space. And we see and saw and continue to see an appetite to rent spaces like the Cave, which is a government space solely, but we are on hand because obviously we've invested significantly in the lighting, etc. But there is that demand to have these unique spaces. So we looked at this is rentable. We've got several breakout rooms that we've created as well that are rentable as well for if you've got large conferences on the go or if you want smaller spaces. We have a full kitchen set up for catering. We have a bar as well, which you've seen just outside.
I've seen the bar, but it was closed.
It was closed, the driest bar in Gib, unfortunately. But it's all designed to link and create a robustness and layers to the product. So we are doing tasting rooms as well for wine tastings, gin tastings, sherry tastings, all these kind of things. So what we want to do is add layers to the product. So you have this idea of Gibraltar is, I remember I interviewed an author once, they said Gibraltar's like an onion, it's just layer after layer after layer after layer. It's a secret wrapped in an enigma, covered in a conundrum. So when you look at it like that, but you can apply that same idea of layers to every single product that you develop. So when we got this, it was like, right, what can we do to both make it more attractive to the tourists, but how can we make it something that's community driven? How can we offer it as a resource for both businesses and the government? And that's why we looked at it and we thought, right, let's look at this space, let's make it rentable, let's create a conference facility. There is a demand for mice, let's have it so you can come up if you've been walking through the Monte and you want to have a drink. There was never anything in the north to cater towards even water. So having the bar here where you can come in, it's cool, it stays at, I believe at a consistent 17 degrees Celsius inside the tunnels year round. So you can come, you can sit down, you can have a drink. It's a great place to kind of, I think, revel in the atmosphere. And then, opening it up to cruise ships and private functions and stuff like that.
The opportunities are endless. But just one thing, because we spoke about it earlier, this is a private, it's a business, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, the site does not belong to me or to my company. It belongs to the people of Gibraltar and the government. What we are is, and we have had the privilege of being custodians to the site and developing the site. So this has not cost the government or the people of Gibraltar anything, but I think I speak as a Gibraltarian myself, we've gained, as a platform.
Yeah. Christian, by taking the step into or out of what you were doing and into a new space or a new sector, tourism, you're learning a lot about a new sector, I'm sure. What do you think some of the biggest opportunities and some of the challenges are within the tourism sector locally? Big question.
Yeah, I know, it is a big question. I think, the elephant in the room is the Brexit deal. And that's going to mean one of two things. Firstly, you need more tourism development and site development. If the border's open and flowing, we need to attract more tourists. If the border's closed, we need to attract more tourists. So I think the most important thing is that I've seen is that, and there has been a push. We're seeing sites developing. You're seeing, I know that the Northern Defences is now coming on. You see a lot of work happening in the Marsh Castle. We've got this, you've got the Cave. The government have been making massive strides, I think, personally, into a very positive push on developing our tourism product. The tour operators are really embracing everything, and they're extremely professional. And I've started to see, especially in the last 5-6 years, which is when we've really been diving into this, that everybody's really coming together and to create the most robust and best product that they can in Gib. So, yeah.
Yes. While we're moving in the right direction, would there be something, sorry to put you on the spot, that you would feel would make a positive change or improve things?
Positive change or improve things?
I think maybe the collaboration sometimes put together.
Had you asked me this a few years ago, I might have said that we needed to have more of an aggressive marketing campaign going on. But I think in the last year, 2 years, I've seen, the tourist board have been doing some phenomenal work on the social media and how they're reaching out to people. So honestly, I think that what would have been a concern of mine years ago has been addressed and is very much moving in the right direction, which would have been marketing.
Christian, we're nearly at the end of the interview, and your passion comes across, and actually the fact that you've moved over has really, for me anyway, maybe some of the listeners will pick this up, is what you were doing before and what you're doing now is actually really, really, really aligned, and it's about telling stories and telling a narrative. Before you go, it's a question that I ask all my guests, and it's, what's that biggest lesson that you know now that you wish you would have known earlier?
Be the most humble person in the room, but try and be the hungriest.
Okay. How has that applied to you?
I think that, like everything in business, you need to strive to do the best that you can for you and for your clients and your products. But you should never forget that you're not the be-all and end-all, that you're surrounded by very talented people, very talented partners, and you need to leverage that as well and realize that you are part of a team.
Well, thank you, Christian. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So welcome to the podcast. I am joined by Gail Francis-Tiron from WW2 Tunnels. Gail, welcome to the Gibraltar Business Podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I have been listening to them on LinkedIn. Yes, I have, because we have our own Tunnel Tales podcast as well, which is all very new to me. So I'm going
to ask you about those in a sec, because that really caught my eye, and as a podcaster, my imagination as well. Mm-hmm. But how did you come to join Christian on his mission with the WW2 Tunnels?
It was heaven sent.
Okay.
Because I had worked with tourism for 28 years at the Gibraltar Tourist Board, where I run the information officers. I used to do the VIP rock tours. I run the tour guides exams, amongst a multitude of things, all tourism related. And then I was transferred towards the end of my career within government to the Upper Rock, where I became the Upper Rock manager. So I did that for a year and a half, and it was towards my retirement age, and I really preferred working more with history, with the people themselves. I love Gibraltar's history in particular. And I was thinking, okay, so I'm going to retire, but I need money, and I need to carry on working because I am a very young 61-year-old, I believe. And then what happened that I met Christian Wright from Wright Tech Media. He was fixing up actually some bits of the tunnels and some signage along the Upper Rock, and we were talking, and I was saying that I would like to carry on, but I'd like to retire, but I don't want to leave tourism. And then he had this brilliant God-sent idea of asking me to join the team. So I joined the team a year ago. So I've been 1 year with Wright Tech Media, semi-retired, and doing exactly what I love doing, which is events, because we're in an event space, researching Gibraltar's history further, and working with a very dynamic team. And
I think Christian, he's what a signing to the team with your experience from tourism as well, right?
I was honored that he had this faith in me. People always have more faith in you than maybe possibly yourself. So, when you're getting older, you're thinking, okay, am I still of value? I know I am, but it's difficult to convince people that sometimes years' experience comes in very, very handy. And I thought, don't know if there's going to be anything else I can do. And then when they asked me, I was honored. And he also recruited another history enthusiast, which is Pete Jackson, which is quite famous in Gibraltar.
Yeah, Pete Jackson, the tunnel guy.
Yes, he's a tunnel guide, he's a lower cave guide, and he knows everything about Gibraltar's military. He's very enthusiastic like myself. And I was, in the tourist board, I always wanted different attractions to look better, to work better. But of course, they're government-owned departments, which the tunnel still is. But because this is a private enterprise who's leased this and doing this for government, it gives us more an opportunity to do a little bit more with it.
What's your hope for the tourist experience then for the tunnels?
What I'm already seeing, because we've been actually based here and the office itself just for a week. So I've been walking around and walking around, and basically I want people to come to the tunnels and to learn about Gibraltar's history. I want them to enjoy the tunnels. Before that, when they came to the tunnels, yes, the tunnels have always been, we never really closed the tunnels. They've been open to tourists. But it was just the raw tunnel, not really telling the stories as I felt personally they should be told. So I love watching them now come in and actually learning why Gibraltar has always been so important to the British. You know, people do ask, tourists ask, why is Gibraltar still British? Why was it so important during the war? Well, it was of vital importance during the war. We were a really important base beside North Africa, which became the enemy, and near Malta. So we were of vital importance. And this is what we're doing here. We're telling the story. So one, we're benefiting the local population, getting the story out and everything, the humongous efforts we did, we went through, we had to do. And also the people are getting the right story when they come into the attraction. So they are learning about us.
One of the powerful ways that I've come across your involvement with this project, because I know you from your previous career, was the Tunnel Tales podcast. Tell me how that came about.
Well, because this company says, right, Gail, we've got to market this, because I'm actually the events manager, coordinator, so I'm supposed to market it so people want to do an event
because I came across that podcast and it was a great way.
Yeah. So I thought, how can we get the message out that's new? So obviously I do look online a lot to see what's current. And I saw that podcast, and I do listen to loads as well anyway. It's a great way of like learning and reading without reading, but it's more entertaining. People are getting away from reading rather than listening more nowadays. So I thought I'm going to start a podcast, and we'd been getting all the photos from all the research we have been doing over the year. And I thought if I can get a podcast, tell stories that are really unusual and would never make it to the history books, I could do this through the podcast, and that's one way to market the venue, both as an events venue and for tourists as well. So we started off having these on LinkedIn. Eventually we're going to be on other sites, other platforms on social media.
So that's listeners, I know that as well as listening to this, check them out. They're called Tunnel Tales.
Tunnel Tales, we were brainstorming, and then it came to me, I thought, Tunnel Tales, what better?
Perfect.
It's got a good rhythm. So because I've spoken to so many people trying to get their photos and their stories, I'm just hearing all these amazing stories, you know, coming out of the woodwork. And it's like, come on, guys, we've got to tell this. So we do tell a few of them, because we still haven't reached all the tunnels, but we're telling a few of the very important stories. And some of these are also in the podcasts. So, for example, I think the very first one I did was with Pete Jackson, where he said, do you know, Gail, that when you walk through the tunnels, sometimes you only see half the body and you look like a ghost? And I said, no, I didn't know that. But I have sometimes been through the tunnels when I've been doing the tours and seen like the Levanta coming in. So you do sometimes have the actual Levanta coming in. Oh, wow. And that's when in older times, people would look and would maybe just see half a body and they would think it was a ghost.
Wow.
So there's a few ghost stories. Peter's quite good at the ghost stories and the ghostly encounters he's had here. But I thought that was really, really cool, because I myself have been in the tunnel and I didn't know this. So this is a natural phenomena which is typically Gibraltarian and affects the tunnels.
Well, this is something where, like myself, apart from given this amazing access to the tunnels today to film this, I hadn't been here for years. But how can people come up and visit? Tell us.
How can people come up here? People say, oh my God, it's all the way up the rock. Yes, it is up the rock. It isn't quite as high as St. Michael's Cave. Locals, for example, can get the #1 bus. And then it's a short walk up a hill. Yeah, it's a steep hill. And it's just past the Moorish castle. And with your resident ID cards, you're a resident, you don't pay to come in. What's always struck me is that people go abroad and go everywhere. But then locally, they don't go to the rock as often as we'd like them to. So it's important that they come and they learn the history. If there's visitors coming up, then obviously they have to pay the fee at any of the entry points as they come up the rock. So that's one way of coming here. I also want people to come here to host their events. You can hire the tunnel for any kind of event, from a wedding to a rock concert, excuse the pun. So you can get this information and information how to get here and everything on hosting your event here through our website, which is going to have our booking platform. So people will be able to use this booking platform, and it's very easy use, it's very user-friendly, and it will be live soon, as will be our website. So it's a way of bringing the event space into a more modern, current area, really, which is, you know.
Well, Gail, it's been amazing chatting with you. This feels like a real kind of fit for you from your career to this. And thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and I love your podcast. By the way, I'm spying on you. Okay, so my tunnel tales is going to get better because of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.